bw'otambula mu Uganda muno wano mu Buganda Katonda creator oba God. Bw'ogenda engulu eyo Lubanga, bw'ogenda e Rwanda Imana, bw'ogenda Mwankolawo Ruhanga ne Toro Nawa, bw'ogenda Etteso Edeke Lokasuban. Naye abantu bonna abalina amannya ag'enjawulo for the creator seem to have the same name for Satan. How come? Is Satan universal and Katonda, Lubanga and Edeke not universal? Thank you.
You made a conclusion there, and you said that they have the same name of Satan, but do they have the same name of God?
No, because here in Uganda, God is Katonda. In Iteso, Edeke. In North, Lubanga.
You pause
in
from
Rwanda,
there.
Imana. In Ankole, Ruhanga. So why the different names for a universal God and seemingly a single name for the devil?
So
is the devil universal and God isn't?
So what's the name of Satan in your language?
Satani.
Then
Because
that,
before these other foreign religions came, evil and good all came from Edeke. Actually, Ateso is a dialect that comes from Akaramojong. Sickness in Akaramojong is Edeke. But again, when you come to Teso, Edeke is God, and Adek is sickness. So for us, we didn't have Satan, and I hope I've answered you, Sebo.
yeah.
And Adek
Sure, you have
in Ateso.
Another Karamojong is here. Yes.
Adek is hospital.
Adekis is hospital. Adek is sickness. Edeke is God.
Okay.
Onfunyere brand.
Nondi kiriya olulimi lutegeera. Kiriya.
Now, okay.
Nti okumalayo ekigambo ekyo kyetooloola ne kiva ku bulwadde ne kigenda ku ddwaliro. Anyamo n'agamba eddwaliro obulwadde
obulwadde.
Eddwaliro obulwadde kati Katonda bamutuuma alwaza. Katonda is Edeke.
That is a different thing.
Lindako. In Akaramojong, Edeke is sickness, bulwadde.
That's true.
In Ateso, Edeke is God.
Yes.
So obulwadde eddwaliro alwaza.
Now, I think what you are discussing, Brother Ariong, is and your question is a pregnant one, but let me try to attempt it from this angle. You are discussing a universal primitive theological understanding of God. How the Karamajongs and the Itesots understood God is the same way the Bahima and the Batusi understood God, and the same way the Jews understood God at the primitive stage, because at the primitive stage, and I think this is where, I am sorry, Brother Sharif, I think this is where Islam still is. it also still understands God that way, because God, as far as Isaiah 45 verse 7 is concerned, God is the source of good and evil. And that is why that is how and why he's all powerful, because he's the source of good and evil. So when you go back to the Bible, and this is why I normally tell people that if you want to understand the Bible, you go back to where you were born and investigate the theology of God from your ethnic groups, because you will appreciate the Bible more if you understand your ethnic theology. When you trace the Jewish theology from Genesis to the point of the exile, God is in charge of both evil and good throughout that. There is no Satan, okay, until the event of the exile in the Old Testament. And how the Jews understood God is the very same way that we Africans understood God. God was that powerful to the extent that he was the cause and source of both evil and good. And that's what Isaiah chapter 45, I think verse 7, I'm sure, I hope I got the verse correct. Verse 7 says, I was trying to open my Bible here, but it is not opening. I don't know why. Isaiah 45 says, for I am anyone with his Bible closed than mine. My soft copy is not opening. I don't know why. Excuse me. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Okay. Isaiah 47, 45. Excuse me. Isaiah 45. Verse 7 says, I form light and create darkness. I make will and create war. I am the Lord who do all these things. So that is how God was understood throughout the Old Testament, from Genesis to the event of the exile. That is how God is understood. He's the one who destroys the world with the floods. He's the one who curses Cain. He's the one who curses the ground, chases people from the Garden of Eden because he's angry they have disobeyed him. He's the one who disorganizes people's languages and interrupts communication and makes sure there's no communication at the Tower of Babel and fails the project. He's the one who breeds the fires of Sodom and Gomorrah. He continues making people barren because they have disobeyed him and they will never have children. He opens the ground and the ground swallows people and he kills them. He strikes people with the boils because they have disobeyed him. But that is not all that he does. He blesses people, those who have worshipped him. He gives them wealth, gives them children, gives them gold and all the wealth because they have worshipped him and they have been faithful to him. And then he curses. He takes land from certain people who do not believe him and kills them and gives that land and their country to those who have worshipped him. When you read the Bible, you will see all that. You will see all that. And that is how God was understood. So when you come to our African traditional religion, you'll get to understand that these kingdoms actually and the wars that they had were wars of gods. Certain ethnic group attacked the other and took their land in the name of the gods. So the gods will bless them. When they failed to get children, it is because the gods were angry, so they had to excite them and please them so that their gardens could grow, their wombs could make children, etc. It's the same thing. This is why I normally tell you, you go back and study, okay? Study your ethnic theology. You'll get to understand the first part of the Bible clearly, and then understand why we insist on reading the Bible, because we Christians argue that the Bible is representative of a universal revelation of God in various cultures. It is representative. That's why we insist on this document. It is representative when you read it in context. So, the example in place that we have right now here is this of the devil, the question asked by my elder brother, Ariong. So in the primitive theological understanding of who God is, he's the source of evil and good. When you read the Bible, like I said, from Genesis to the event of the exile, you'll find that. It is not until the Jews are exiled and they're in Babylon, and then they are face to face with another revelation of God from the Zoroastrianism religion, because the Zoroastrian actually believed that it is a contradiction to argue that God is the source of good and evil. And their philosophy was saying something that is good should be essentially good and only good. And if it is good, it can only bear goodness and goodness alone. So it is at that point that the Jews review their theology, okay? And then they come up with this element of the adversary. The Hebrew word is Hashatan. Now, when they start developing that theology of Hashatan, okay, it is at that time, because you see, the whole idea of the book of Job is a mythology, not original with the Israelites, of course, but from the surrounding nations that believed that there was an opponent to this good God. A God who is all good can only have an opponent that is an alternative of evil. So later the Masoretes in the exile start writing, and that's how we get our Genesis chapter 2, verse 16 and 17, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Until you get to know good as good and good exclusively, and know evil as evil and evil exclusively, you'll always suffer under a God who is the source of both. And until today, people are suffering that. Even people who worship their ancestors. But you see, even in the ancestral religion, the Bajajja who blesses are the same Bajajja who curses in the event that they are angry. So this is where the Christian God now comes in. And this is where we place the event of the cross. Because Christianity presents a God who rather dies than inflict evil to get his way. He rather dies to get his way than inflict evil. But the gods and the way we understood God in the ancient way, it was them and them alone. They predetermined everything. They were that powerful. They were never wrong. Whoever challenged their decisions was killed on spot, and that killing was justified, and because they were the source of good and evil. So, Brother Rio, to respond to your question, why do we agree? I want to paraphrase your argument, which is very interesting. Why do all cultures and all tribes almost agree on God? Actually, have even different names for God, but have one single name for Satan. Satan. It is because even Satan itself is not a Luganda word, Sitani. It's not a Swahili word, Shitani, Shwaitani. Therefore, I'm told that the Muslims have got something called Ibris. I am here to investigate that theology in there. So why do they have that Shatan? It's because they draw it from the translation. Okay, in the RSV, Revised Standard Version, it is the adversary. Okay, in the KJV, it is Satan. But they are all struggling with the phrase. It's not even a name in the Hebrew language. Hashatan, the adversary, the one who is against, the one who is opposed to God. It is after the exile that the Jews now start reviewing their theology and say, God cannot be the source of good and at the same time also the source of evil. We need to review this. There must be Satan. And then you have all that in the mythology of the book of Job, where the children of God come, and also Satan also comes, he flies in there. Then you have these far-fetched interpretations of of Isaiah chapter 14 as Satan being an angel who fell from heaven, which is also contradictory at the same time, but that is for another day. But the whole idea here that I would like to emphasize and place here and actually educate myself and those who are willing with is that the Christian God is only good, and only goodness comes from him. But the misunderstanding of God from time past has been that he's the source of both good and evil. That is why in the imprecatory Psalms, when believers are hurt and oppressed, they pray those prayers, those imprecatory prayers. God, attack our enemies, kill their children, because they know there is that in him. Later on, when you come into the New Testament, there is a God who comes and say, pray for your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Now, that is not the same God that you've been reading from the Old Testament. This is why many people actually argue. But it's the God of the Old Testament, the same God as that of the New Testament. Maybe the Son is more kind than the Father. The Catholics start to say, you can pray through the mother, then the mother talks to the Son, and maybe the Son will talk to the Father. The Adventists say that there is that holy sanctuary where Jesus is pleading with the Father to forgive you because the Father is very tough. It is because we are drawing from those sources and those wells of God being the source of evil. But it is one God. He has always been good. He will always be good and only good and exclusively good. But we have misunderstood him to be the source of both good and evil. And that's how we have ended up in these religious teachings of our religions, of our traditions, etc., etc. And until we understand that, I hope we will not be liberated. Thank you very much.